Hi, everybody. Welcome to Dr. Jane's DC on this beautiful Wednesday night. Glad to have you with me tonight. And I'm watching our Periscope feed tonight because I can't get into the chat roll at the Exceptional Conservative Network. We are part of the Exceptional Conservative Network under the guidance of Ken McClellan, who founded it. And I'm happy to be here. We have lots to talk about. I know that the situation we're all living in is on everyone's mind. Every day it's changing, and things are they're just unfolding. And let's just pray that it's over sooner rather than later. Listen, let me share a few things with you. We got a great show tonight. It's really worth your while to stay through the whole show. I'm going to look at our Periscope, and in case there are any questions you have, anything about the show, please feel free to share your questions. The show tonight, we have Rick Manning. Richard Manning has been here before. He's president of Americans for Limited Government. I love having Rick. He's also been involved in a lot of emergency preparedness for the president and the White House before, so I'm sure he's got a lot to fill us in on. And I'm really excited also to have Kelly Sadler tonight. Kelly is the communications director for America First PAC, which I believe is the only official PAC for the president's campaign. She's the communications director. We're going to talk to her about what impact this is having, possibly on the president's campaign. And there's just a lot going on. I'm really worried about everything he's being hit with, but not worried about his ability to handle it. So, I said on Monday night, I asked you to think about if this situation with the China virus, and I love that President Trump is calling it that, if you're from your perspective, do you think we're being played? I know the market's dropping. That's a matter of panic. I still think it's artifact. That underlying all of that, our economy in our country is incredibly strong. I know that we're moving into an area where there's going to be some damage to people's livelihoods and small businesses. But someone sent me something really interesting today, and I wanted to share it with you. They wrote to me and said, China found various backdoors to short sale the market. We see this in the index options. They're using index futures to short sale the market as part of the trade war. This is a part of a multi-pronged attack to destroy our economy and destroy our hawkish president. And why? The suggestion is to install a puppet like Biden, who we know China and the Ukraine and all the other corrupt governments whose son Hunter struck a multi-billion-dollar deal with China, by the way. They know that Biden will be more friendly to them than President Trump. Today, you probably heard that President Trump signed the Defense Production Act. This is really interesting. I wanted to share it with you. By the way, he's fully engaged FEMA. He's got HUD suspending foreclosures and evictions through April. And he's got U.S. Navy hospital ships being mobilized off of California and New York. I'm trying to bring up this broadcast here so we can... There we go. And I want to be able to see... I see your questions coming in. By the way, I'm excited to see we have a lot more people tonight. I'm checking in on Periscope. So I am looking at your questions. If I see anything, I'll be happy to answer them. We had about over 500 views from Monday's show. So those are people that watch the replays. Okay, getting back to the topic of President Trump. I wanted to play something to you today because, while all this is going on, people are suffering, losing maybe their jobs or their hours at work and things like that. We have this disgusting American press. I just wish they would evaporate. This is what they thought it was important to ask President Trump. And, you just got to love him with the answers. So take a listen to this.
Why do you keep calling this the Chinese virus? There are reports of dozens of incidents of bias against Chinese Americans in this country. Your own aide, Secretary Azar, says he does not use this term. He says ethnicity does not cause the virus. Why do you keep using this? A lot of people say it's racist.
It's not racist at all, no, not at all. It comes from China. That's why.
It comes from China. This is what this press, which is really a mirror of the communist Democrats, is focused on. Because if you sneeze or you fart, it's racist. I'm just so sick of it, and I hope you are too. And I hope you remember it when you go to the polls. Let's hear the rest of it.
I want to be accurate. Yeah, please, John.
And she keeps hounding him.
I have great love for all of the people from our country, but as you know, China tried to say at one point, maybe they stopped now, that it was caused by American soldiers. That can't happen. It's not going to happen. Not as long as I'm president. It comes from China. John, please.
It comes from China, so eat it. Don't be going around. Look at the disinformation program that China's instituted. Now starting a propaganda program that our military started it. I'm going to tell you guys, I started talking about it on Monday. My belief from little bits and pieces, and I don't have intel, but I'm telling you, it's Occam's razor. If a thing looks a certain way, it probably is a certain way. And this thing really stinks like a Chinese virus, okay, coming right out of Wuhan, out of a lab that's one of only 10 of the world's level 4 biosafety labs. They made it, they released it, they're causing all this trouble into our economy, the world economy, they're weakening everything. This is the retaliation for President Trump taking them to task in the trade war. And he's going to emerge victorious. Now, the only thing I'm worried about, and I want to mention it, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but send me your comments and questions, is he's being advised, sometimes by good people, sometimes by a combination of good advisors and bad advisors. And what he's being advised right now is, the bailout for big corporations like the airlines. Look, I don't want our airlines to go away either, but they're not. And for small businesses that are hanging on by a thread and won't make it 30 days without traffic and people, patronizing their businesses, they're talking about a line of credit at 3.5%. Big deal. The Fed just lowered the rates to 0. I say flip it. Offer a line of credit to the big corporations. Otherwise, the president's going to they're going to guide him into looking like he's a Wall Street shill. And give the money without any requirement to pay it back to the small businesses so that they survive. So that when we get past this, and we will, they will be still there on your corner. Okay? Okay, I had to rant about that. That was part of Dr. Jane's rant for tonight. But it's just so important that you think about what you're seeing before you. Stop focusing on the toilet paper. It's a distraction. I went to a couple of my local grocery stores today just to get a couple of items, like I normally would. And you get your finger on the pulse of things. And I noticed that a lot of things have been restocked, right? So it's not about the supply chain. We didn't lose our roads and our trucks and things like that. Supplies are there, okay? And this is one of the highest grossing Whole Foods in the country in this area of D.C., Northern Virginia. So that should tell you something, okay? Just slow down. You're being played. Okay. Now, any questions about coronavirus? I'm trained as a medical professional, a prescriber. I've done a lot of research in neuroscience. Any questions about? I'm most hopeful when it comes to the research that's going on right now for an antiviral, something that will have enough antiviral activity to reverse it when somebody does get it. That would totally reverse everything in the markets. When you're talking about things that have to be tested, like vaccines and monoclonal antibodies, other approaches, pharmaceutical, bio elements to fight this thing, prevent it or treat it once you get it, other than an antiviral, you're talking about, even if it's fast-tracked and the FDA gives, fast-track clearance and everything is rushed and they use smaller effect size and things like that for a smaller N of subjects, you're still talking at least a year, because then you have to, analyze the data, write it up, get it peer-reviewed, and then get it out there. So it's a huge feat, and it does take time under the fastest of conditions. And I'm wearing my Guns Save Lives button for a reason tonight. I always wear something intentionally. There's always a reason behind it. By the way, before I forget, Laura Loomer for Congress. Got to put in a plug every show. But I'm wearing this because we have these communist Democrats in Virginia, and they are they're moving next to, well, gee, maybe we ought to, slow down the guns or get a gun buyback. No, sorry, guys. For those of you who did go to all the gun shows in January and February and stocked up, good for you, like a bunch of my friends and I did. And I also want to just say thank you to, this is actually a fan of Laura Loomer's, but he is, his name is Dave, and he is known on Instagram as I Stand in Front. Great patriot, great supporter. He makes beautiful Christmas ornaments, and he donates the money to deplorables who are in trouble. But he made me this paperweight of the picture of me with Phil Haney, who was murdered in California last month. He was the DHS whistleblower. We spent time with a bunch of friends in Israel on a security tour, and his book, See Something, Say Nothing. Thank you so much, Dave. I cherish this paperweight. We are waiting for our friend Rick Manning, and I just want to check and see if, let me see if, we had Rick confirm, so I'm not sure, excuse me. Let's see, where did I have Rick? This is live TV. He did confirm this afternoon, sent him the link to the show. Let me make sure I told him to pop in at around 8:10. I mean, we certainly have enough to talk about. I'll keep my eye open for Rick. If he pops into the green room here, I'll be able to bring him into the show. But I wanted, I know everybody's frustrated. I think there's a tremendous amount of overkill right now on this virus, and it just doesn't make sense, guys. As I said on Monday, you've got in the second week of March 10,000 new reported cases to the CDC of influenza A and B. And you have, in the first week of March, you had 15,000 new cases of influenza A and B. We have the coronavirus in the United States yesterday was 6,100 since January. So something's off. Let's see if, and we've had Rick on a bunch of times, and I know that, I hope he's not having trouble with, let's see if he's, let me see if I can do a little text with him. No. Thought I had his, okay, I just have his email. It's always frustrating. Hang in there with me. Anybody have any questions while we're waiting for Rick to pop in or respond? I think he might have. Remember that one time we had Phil Haney? I think it was Phil's first or second appearance on the show. And he didn't show up. And I had like this black screen, and I was, talking about different topics. I was talking about his book. And it was like the next day. And he's such a love. I knew something had to be off. And the next day he apologized because he had been very much involved in planning his late wife's memorial. And I just felt so bad for him because he had just lost her when we were in Israel together. Let's see if something's happened with Rick. We'll go to a little break. And if you guys, I see there's a bunch of people on Periscope. If you guys have any questions for me, anything about our network, we're adding a nightly news show that'll be on before Dr. Jane's DC. I'm very excited about that. I'm not sure if I can announce the famous person who's going to be the newscaster, but we will have a 1-hour news show every night, I believe on the weeknights. And that is going to be an exciting addition to the Exceptional Conservative Network. And by the way, don't leave after my show tonight, because you've got Ken McClinton for 2 hours of the Exceptional Conservative Show, and he always has amazing guests. Let's see. That is so odd. And let's see, next week we're going to have Sandra Lee. Sandy Lee wrote a book. Let's see, what was her book called? Author of Dear Donald, Letters from a Loving Deplorable. Sorry about that, guys. I wanted to talk a little bit about, as long as we're waiting, I wanted to talk a little bit about this Bill Barr thing. You know, everybody's always on me when I complain, but Bill Barr has been in office well over a year now. And think about it. Low-hanging fruit, Hillary, Benghazi, Fast and Furious, the tarmac with Bill Clinton, all the people that Jeffrey Epstein had on his Lolita Express. I mean, and then, what did they say about Durham? Durham, as you know, who's appointed by Barr, and everyone's saying, oh, Durham's he's going to be doing a great, investigation. That's where, be patient. That's where it's going to come out. Well, the latest word about Durham and his investigation is that he is not going to be done until September. Over a year. Look, I'm not even a lawyer, and I could have done the damn investigation in less than a year. Let Dr. Jane at it. God, I'm not even complaining after a month or two. This is over a year. It's ridiculous. And by the way, here was the other bombshell. Not only is Durham is not going to be done with this investigation until September, he also hasn't spoken to Brennan or Clapper yet. Gee, do you think the fix is in? Oh my God. So phony. So phony. Where's my Rick Manning? Wow. Let's see if I can get his publicist, whose name I won't say because she's a friend and an excellent publicist. Let's see if she can jostle him and get him on, because we can salvage. It's only 8:18. We can get him on for 10 minutes. I'll shorten the break. I was really hoping to talk to Rick about the timing of this coronavirus. And this is part of what I was saying at the beginning of the show. The timing of this epidemic turned pandemic. You all know that China sat on this from like late November. Oh, somebody's here from Scotland. Okay. I'm from Scotland, and if I lived in the USA, I'd have guns. I'm sorry you can't. But stay safe anyway. That's why we love our Second Amendment here. That's why we're proud to be Americans. Somebody says they totally agree with me on Clapper and Brennan. I mean, I know I'm jumping back and forth between coronavirus, but it's all part of the same swamp. I'm sure this is part of the globalist plan. It's not. It doesn't take a Philadelphia lawyer to figure it out, if that still has any weight. But I was going to ask Rick about the timing. And what he thought about is the rate of multiplication of this virus spreading. It just doesn't make sense. I'm a medical professional. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not an infectious disease expert, although I have worked a great deal in the earlier days as a nurse and a nurse practitioner in isolation cases, direct and reverse isolation. Reverse isolation is when someone is sick, like in cancer, and you don't want to bring organisms to them. Someone says here they had a friend who was in China around the time 2 to 3 weeks before it was official. So they were hiding it. They were hiding it for sure in China. And this is part of why I think this is a plan. Like I said to you before, I think I read to you what my friend sent. This is, in fact, here's the other part of it. This is, in fact, a regime change that has come home to the U.S. For decades, the U.S. has been projected or perceived to be regime change on other countries. This person is saying with her friend in China, she said they were screening people with the face temp scanners before they came back to the USA. A lot of the China virus, the China coronavirus, I'm sticking with President Trump on that, was brought here by Chinese people flying back and forth and Americans flying back and forth. And they knew it. They knew it. Someone says they probably were not sure. Yeah, you think so? Then why are they shorting the stock market? Why are they saying that the China coronavirus will bring the United States to its knees? Don't be so naive, my friends. Is my seat leather? Well, that's an interesting question. Thank you for asking. Yeah, okay, back to Durham and Barr. I just want to wrap up on that point. Oh, we have Rick. Okay, let me bring him in. We had must have had a little glitch. Rick, good evening.
I had a big glitch. Good evening.
Did you have a little glitch?
Yeah, it was my keyboard ceased to work. I think we're going to all discover glitches as we have to deal with this new world where we do everything online and nothing actually in person.
But, yeah, we're all putting a burden on the system.
Yeah.
Rick, how are you doing? I just want I want to introduce you because I know you've been on the show before, and I'm so excited to have you back. But folks, I want you to understand, Rick is president of Americans for Limited Government. While he was with the Department of Labor, he was part of the emergency preparedness team, which is one of the many reasons I wanted to have him on again tonight. And we have time, Rick. We'll just go into the break period. So he's no stranger to national crises like the one upon us. Rick, what's happening here? What do you think of the timing of this epidemic and turned into a pandemic?
Well, it's certainly strange. Let's be clear. This is either as bad as the public health officials fear, or it was extremely effective in taking down our entire economy. And there's only one country that benefits from that, and that is China, who appears to be recovering really rapidly from it. Goldman Sachs says that they're going to have their supply chains back up and running in no time. And given that, and given where we are in this process, they are now looking like the one-eyed man in the land of the blind in terms of their economy and their ability to do things. So it's either fortuitous for them, or it is something much less than that, much worse than that. I think that the president has exactly right when he calls it the Chinese virus.
Me too.
People have to remember where this came from. This isn't a coronavirus. There's, a common cold is a coronavirus. This is something that's new, it's different, and it came directly from China. And without speculating about, we know it came from Wuhan. We know they have a biolab in Wuhan, but without doing any of that kind of speculation, which it's not hard to connect the dots. I think it's pretty clear that this is a public health crisis that we are going to have to deal with and deal with aggressively. And the one thing that I think may come out to be true is if we can get the MSNBC and the CNN types to kind of shut up, we should be able to come together on this and understand that even if we don't blame China, we have to understand we have a common enemy. But at the very least, Congress needs to start taking a very hard look at the mistake that was made 19 years ago when we gave China the permanent normalized trade relations status, and go back to a year-to-year evaluation of it to make certain that the China we're dealing with today isn't a China that says, oh, we're going to make you sick and then we're going to withhold the prescription drugs that we convinced the multinationals to produce all here in China, and making your entire population vulnerable to Chinese blackmail. That's the kind of thing that Congress can do, they should do, and I would encourage them to do it now.
I sure hope so, Rick. I'm a little suspicious. I see these multiplication rates. We've had the Chinese virus in the United States, confirmed cases about, well, as of yesterday, 6,100. It's in the 7,000s, but that's since January. I just looked at the CDC rates, reported rates of influenza combination A and B. In the first week of March, there were 15,000 new cases, and last week, 10,000 new cases. Why are we reacting this way for something that doesn't seem to be multiplying that fast in the U.S.? Am I off?
The assumption is, here's the assumption. The assumption is that it will multiply to the point that it affects about half the population. And if the 2% fatality rate from it is right, and I have no reason to. Right now we're about 1.7%, but that's recognizing that many of the people who had the virus early weren't tested, and as a result aren't showing up in the cases. But right now it's about 1.7% fatality, and I think that will go down. But let's just assume it's a 1% mortality rate. At that point, if it affects 175 million people, 170 million people, 0.5% or 1% mortality rate is 1.7 million people. So that's a big deal. 1.7 million people dying is a big deal. The reason they're taking this more seriously is because of the belief that this virus is exponentially more deadly than the flu virus that we normally get. Now, let me give you some good news. In Germany, where they've been testing extensively, they test everybody. And the Germans are testing and they're retesting because they're the Germans.
They've got about 11,000 cases.
Of the cases that they have about a 2% or a 0.2% fatality rate. And if you translate that 1% down to a 0.2%, at that point, you rather have 1.7 million people. You've cut that by, by 4/5, by 80%. And at that juncture, you have something that's really bad, but it isn't nearly as bad as they're projecting, where they're saying we could lose literally millions of people to this, largely the elderly and most vulnerable. So it is and quite honestly, the president and others have chosen to take precaution against the worst case scenarios. Hopefully what will happen is we'll turn the corner on this sooner rather than later. And when we do that, we'll have some vaccines developed, because the president's breaking down the system for creating vaccines. We'll have potential cures invented, at least things that will make you survive it, increase survival time. At which point we'll have the capacity to deal with this, and extending the time frame, the flattening of the curve that everybody talks about. What that does in reality, it doesn't make it so less people get sick. It allows for the researchers to hopefully come up with medicines that will make it so fewer people die. And if we get a vaccine, then we stop the number of people getting sick. So those are the kind of things we're hoping for. We're not going for a herd immunity here, where 60% get immunity and suddenly it kind of transfers the rest of the herd. We're saying, let's flatten the curve. Let's make sure we don't get a big spike of people who are sick. We destroy our healthcare system and overrun it. And let's spread it out, and then hope that we can come up with cures. And I know every day out there looking for that.
Well, my concern is that, vaccines and, monoclonal antibodies and other treatments take, even if the FDA fast tracks it, you're looking at least a year. And our economy, I know it's strong. And speaking of that, I wanted to run something by you that I talked about at the top of the show. It's a concern of mine. Tell me if I'm off and help me sort this out. But it seems like, and I know the president has a lot of advisors around him. Some of them are good, some of them may not be, but they're coming out with, a potential, bailout for large corporations like the airlines, but small businesses get like a line of credit for 3.5% when the Fed just dropped the rates to zero. I mean, shouldn't it be flipped? I mean, we're going to lose a ton of small businesses before we bounce back. Where am I going wrong?
Well, let me give you a couple of pieces of good news. By moving back, I know for individuals they've done this, and I hope they've done for businesses. Moving back the tax filing deadline. If a small business has not filed their taxes they can move that back without penalty and not file their taxes without penalty. And my
Okay.
hope is that what they do is they will forgive those taxes and essentially use that money that would have been paid to the government as a means of helping those small businesses survive. Secondly, there's 3 different packages that are being developed. You've got the first 2, the second one's in Congress now. The third one is directed at small businesses specifically to try to make certain that small businesses are not run out of business by this idea that they're going to foot the bill for people's unemployment that's caused by the government. So that's very real concern. We've been all over it. The administration is working on it night and day. I've talked to a number of members of Congress who are working on that because they understand that if we disconnect the people from the businesses and we cause this business to be shut down forever, you can't give them loans. Saying, gee, we're going to give you low interest rate loans doesn't do any good. What you have to do, you have to keep them alive now. And that means undergirding them, and it's going to cost a lot of money, and it's going to be a problem. But hopefully, it's short term. To give some perspective, Goldman Sachs in a briefing yesterday, I guess earlier today, told investors, told their investment managers that they were looking at a 20% drop in our GDP as a result of this, because we've shut down small business. That's going to cost a lot of money to jumpstart. But here's what we know. At the end of World War II, basically 2 times, at the end of the Spanish flu, which came in 1919, and killed a lot of young people, which followed right on the heels of World War I, which killed a lot of young people. In 1920 and 21, by virtue of putting policies in place that basically let the economy run, what happened was we had record growth. We had something called the Roaring '20s start out because the economy was let run. And that's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to let this economy run. With this taking this kind of hit, we're going to have to basically say, unleash it totally, cut every regulation that it all gets in the way. We have to, and we need to create an environment so when we come through this, which we will, when we come through this, our economy is not on its knees for 10 years, but comes roaring back with 8, 10, 12% growth rates per year for 3-4 years, and ends up stronger at the end than it ever was before. Because if jumpstart it, it's not just putting money into it, that's part of it, but it's cutting away all regulatory excess and allowing businesses to do what they do, which is make stuff and supply stuff, and then move from there to help get us through this and have the economy go like this after having watched it go into the toilet over the last 2 weeks, because the government decided to choke the economy in order to try to protect Americans from dying in mass. And that's just the fact. I don't know if that was the right decision or not, but it was the decision they made, because ultimately they said, we don't want millions of Americans dying. If this is what we have to do to prevent it, we'll do that. Ultimately, it's up to you and me to do the social distancing properly so that we don't inadvertently spread it or get it.
And cause more problems. Rick, 2 things. We have 1 minute left. 2 things. Are you confident that President Trump will be reelected in spite of this? Quick yes or no?
I don't know.
Oh my gosh. Wow. For you to say I don't know is frightening to me. And secondly, go ahead.
I got to give you answers.
Did you want to comment on that, or is it because of this?
The reason is I don't know how we're going to come out the end. I don't know who's going to get the blame. I know right now there's a rally around the flag effect and his favorables going up. But as people are stuck at home for 2-3 months, it could get a little spicy. And if this thing doesn't end and we end up with jobs at the end of the day and people are unemployed afterwards, at that point, it's going to be the handling of it. It's going to come under a lot of scrutiny.
Yes, I agree. And lastly, before we hang up, you've got a great new book out relatively recently. Can you tell us the title and where they can find it?
Necessary Noise, how Donald Trump inflames the culture war and why that's a good thing for America. And just go to rickmanning.com, rickmanning.com. It'll take you right to the Amazon page. You can read a little excerpt of it. And if you like it, go ahead and buy it. And if you don't like it, don't say you don't like it. Just maybe they will.
I'm sure they will, Rick.
I put it together. It's a really good book.
Yeah, it is. I've read it myself, and you've got a lot of great stuff on your website as well. Thank you again for being with us tonight, Rick. I'll be hounding you again soon.
Absolutely. And by then, well, all will be well. God's in control.
Why am I off audio? Hello? Yeah, that was really great to have Rick. I mean, I figured he had a technical glitch. And, he's just got his finger on the pulse. And he's talking to people in Congress, and that was scary. We've got to rally around President Trump and just, get over this hump and get over it quickly. Let's all, do what we need to do, and it's terribly frightening. Let's go to a quick break. And we will have Kelly Sadler with us when we return.
Hey everybody, this is Dr. Jane Ruby in Washington, D.C., author of A Sea of New Media. I wanted to tell you a little bit about this book because I was inspired to write it by Andrew Breitbart, who actually vindicated the Tea Party after they were falsely accused of calling 3 African-American congressional leaders the N-word, and nobody could come up with a video or an audio. So he told them weeks later, and on the National Mall, to hold up their cell phones, and thousands of people held up their cell phones, and you could see this beautiful in the night, and he said, there you have a sea of new media to capture the lies. Folks, we can't trust our mainstream media. We cannot trust our press.
When you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people.
When President Trump says they're the enemy of the people, he's not being a dictator. He's telling the truth. They won't tell us the truth. But if we all have our cameras out in public, they can't lie if thousands of us are showing a video of something happening or not happening. So I encourage you to pick up a copy of the book. It's called A Sea of New Media. And if you think you can't make a difference, think about the guy who caught Hillary Clinton on tape, the average citizen caught Hillary Clinton being dragged into the van at the 9/11 memorial in 2016. We never would have known she was ill if it wasn't for that single individual citizen. Pick up a copy of A Sea of New Media on Amazon, and if you happen to see me around DC, I'll be happy to sign the book for you and give you a big hug. I'm on Facebook and Twitter, and I have a show in DC called Dr. Jane's DC, Tuesday and Thursday nights on the Exceptional Conservative Network. Please join me again. I'm Dr. Jane Ruby. See you next time.
Okay, we're back. Thanks for staying with us. This is Dr. Jane's DC coming to you live twice a week from your nation's capital on the Exceptional Conservative Network. We just spoke with President of Americans for Limited Government, Rick Manning. Love having Rick on. And we had some pretty sobering commentary from him. He tells it like it is. And, he said we don't know how we're going to come out on the other side of this thing, but the president was certainly focused on saving millions of American lives. So let's rally around him and do everything we can do to get this thing over with. Even though I do believe, and I think everybody more and more people are starting to believe that this is a Chinese, operation. And I see that our next guest is in our green room, so I'm going to bring her in soon. We were running just a couple of minutes late because of Rick, and so we'll get back to this topic again. Let's move on in the show, guys. Thanks for staying with me. We really have wonderful guests tonight. So my next guest, and I'm really happy to have her here tonight. This is very exciting for me. Kelly Sadler is Director of Communications at America First Policies and America First Action, a pro-Trump political action committee. We'll talk to her about that. She'll be in charge of policy and communication efforts supporting our great President Donald J. Trump, and she's former assistant to the president. Kelly, welcome to the show tonight.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's great to see you. I was looking forward to having you on tonight. We've been having a sobering discussion tonight, of course, about what we're all living through right now.
Yeah.
And I know that you're kind of close to the pulse of everything that's going on. First, before we get into that, tell us a little bit about America First PAC and your role in the organization.
Yeah, so America First Action PAC is the only PAC that is supported by the White House. We are looking at the 6 states that we must win in order to win in November. These are the swing states of Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Ohio. So we will be going into these states with the president's message, his list of accomplishments, and we'll also be defining our candidate, our opponent, who looks to be Joe Biden at this point.
Yes, the coronation of.
Yeah, exactly right.
Kelly, are you worried or concerned that because right now with the conditions set forth that the president can't continue his fantastic rallies? What's your sense when you talk to people across the country of where they are in this thing with regard to his reelection?
Well, you know what? The coronavirus is something that was unpredicted. It's a national pandemic. It is thrown a wrench into, both our reelection cycle as well as the Democrats. Mm-hmm. It's something that is out of our hands and is out of our control. And so what the president is doing every day is he's demonstrating his decisive leadership. Mm-hmm. Every day, his staff and himself go out into the press corps and brief them. Every day there's updates. This is a situation which really is, hour by hour, changing by the moment. So the most important thing for us right now is to reinforce the president's message. It is to let the people know that he's there for them. He cares about them. He's doing everything within his power, to stamp out this pandemic and to make Americans safe. And so that is first and foremost. In the rallies, yes, we'd love to have them, but in the interest of public health, we just cannot have them at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is President Trump's 9/11,
Yeah.
But I certainly wouldn't want anyone in the office other than him right now. I mean, it's a horror to think of it. Who do you think is behind this China virus? I mean, we're just kind of all waking up to some of the facts, like the Chinese sat on it since late November, things like that. They've been shorting the market, and they've been calling us out and saying that they're going to bring us to our knees with this virus. I mean, they've almost come out and said it. So, what do you think?
Yeah, China is behind this virus. So when the president says this is the Chinese virus, it's not racist, it's not xenophobic. It is an actual fact. This virus originated out of Wuhan province in China. And the Chinese, really do have an axe to grind against the United States and this president, because he's been so aggressive with them. He brought tariffs upon them. He wants free and reciprocal trade, and this has always been his agenda. He wants U.S. jobs to come back to the U.S. He wants to get our supply chain out of China. He wants U.S. manufacturing to come back here, and there's going to be an executive order in the coming weeks out of the White House that is Buy American, because it's so essential that we have control of our supply chains, especially when it comes down to pharmaceuticals, latex gloves, masks, things that the medical community needs in these sorts of pandemics that we cannot be reliant on China for. And this has always been the president's message. China's a bad actor. We need to aggressively go after them. We need to bring U.S. manufacturing that went offshoring in China back into the United States. And China is trying to vie for world dominancy. And we, as the U.S., are the #1 superpower, and we need to remain that way. And that is all under his leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we know that his long trajectory, his plan was to move and he started everything. He put everything in motion to bring back companies to the United States. But I think he was in the process of all of that in terms of getting manufacturing back into our country. Yeah. And boy, I think a lot of people are going to buy into that again.
I mean, absolutely. I was just, and this is just an anecdotal story, but I was at the dentist last week, and I was asking him, how's this affected your business? And at that point, it hadn't affected his business much, but the masks. He was just like, listen, we get our masks out of China. There's been a delay. I don't have the supply that I need. And you know what, Kelly? Like, I would spend $2 or $3 more per box of masks if they were manufactured in the United States, because that is what it means to be independent and to buy American and to have our supply chains be secure. So yeah, would it cost me a little bit more? Yes. Am I willing to pay that so that I know that I'll have a constant supply and be able to keep my business going? Absolutely. And I think that's where we are as Americans, or where we need to be at. Like, yes, we might pay a little bit more for these goods. It won't be so much more, but in the long run, it's better off for everybody.
Yeah, I think Americans I think that maybe if there's a silver lining or two in this terrible situation, they're really making that connection that President Trump talked about. And so are they willing to pay a little bit more for, and not get those cheap Walmart, versions of things? And no offense to Walmart, they were just following along. But, I think Americans might, because now they've lived through shortages and they've seen the dependence on China and how dangerous it's been all these years. To put our reliance on not only a foreign country, but a foreign country that wants to destroy us. Yeah,
an adversary. Absolutely.
I'm hoping that Americans really see that. I'm hoping they remember it all the way to November 3rd. That's the other thing. I was a little concerned. I want to know what you thought of it. And we talked to Rick Manning about it earlier, too, that, the president has a lot of actors around him, a lot of advisors. And it seems like he's mulling. I like the fact that he's mulling. First of all, he looks very angry, because I think he knows down deep what the Chinese have done, and he knows much more than we do. But there was talk about, like writing a stimulus check to these big corporations, and whereas the small business people were going to get a line of credit. And I can see that he's mulling. He's probably got people pulling at him. I never trust his entire entourage inside there. But I have confidence that because I'm afraid it's going to be perceived as he's been, and we know he's not bought by Wall Street, but it's going to look like he leaned toward that. What are your thoughts about that whole situation?
So the president knows that his base are small business owners. He knows that they're like the tanning salons, the nail salons, the restaurants, the bars, the gyms. Like, these are the people who came out to vote for him and support him, the forgotten men and women in America.
Yes.
And so he is going to do everything he can to support them. And I think that's the reason why you have Steve Mnuchin and you have the White House support behind this stimulus bill, which will give $300 billion loans to small businesses that they can access through their financial institutions so that they can provide for payroll, even if they're going through huge hardship, that they can provide for their payroll, they can provide for these health benefits for their staff that is affected by this. And this will go directly into their pockets. The Treasury is going to direct, the last I heard, and this is all an evolving situation, but the Treasury can, do a direct deposit. And so you'll see it automatically, and you'll see it in April, and then you'll see another check in May. And that is the first priority of this administration. The airlines also get $50 billion, but the airline industry is really indispensable to the U.S. economy. And
That's true.
That's also why they were included in this first round of this stimulus bill.
That makes sense, because we need the freedom of movement to conduct business and to be free. So I totally understand that. I know I've talked to a lot of small business owners, and some even in my own family who've said, on a good day, we're making it month to month. We go with, with the trend of business. So I'm glad he's got that on his radar. Kelly, what do you think it's going to take in terms of what we're going through now for President Trump to win in November? I mean, a month ago I would have said, look, we don't have any hurdles. This is going to be a landslide of all landslides, and it still might be. But what do you think it's going to take, without rallies and other things right now?
It's going to be his leadership through this crisis. He said today that he was a wartime president, and that's essentially what he is. He's going to battle with an invisible virus, something that we never would have predicted or seen. And so the stuff that he's doing today, like the Defense Production Act, which allows the U.S. to call upon private industry for like ventilators, latex gloves, masks, things that they're in shortage of, to kind of go to the front of the line to get private industry to produce this for them, is a huge step. Saying that medical practitioners can go across state lines, so wherever the need is the most, that there won't be a shortage of doctors. That was a bureaucratic red tape that he just cut right through. It's ideas and doing these things that he's just on a daily basis. He's got to update the people, reassure them, be honest with them. Like, the worst is yet to come, unfortunately. But this too shall pass. This is not like the 2008 financial crisis where the financial banks got themselves into trouble. This is something that we've never seen before. The financial institutions are solid. The economy is strong. Unfortunately, we have to shut most of it down, but when we're able to reopen it, we'll be able to reopen it, and everyone will see the resurgence of this great economy because of the policies that this president has put in place.
Yeah, and the policies he put in place before this crisis. It's easy to see, and it's testing his mettle, and I don't think there's any contest. Like I said before, I couldn't imagine anyone else in the position other than him right now. So anyway, how can people, I don't know if people can go to the website for America First PAC. How can people get involved and help, maybe on that grander scale? I know people are doing a lot locally, but what can they do?
Just go to our website. It's www.a1apac.org. You can see what we're up to, all of our latest news releases, as well as donate if you feel so inclined. Right now, every dollar that is contributed will go right back into this president's reelect.
That's fantastic. That's wonderful. Well, it was great to speak with you tonight, Kelly. I hope you'll come back a little bit later in the election cycle and give us an update. It'll be really fun.
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you so much for having me on tonight.
Very, very much our pleasure. Have a great night.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that was great. Loved seeing Kelly. She's a great guest. And, you got an inside look from someone here on the ground in D.C. a lot, someone who is involved intimately in the president's campaign. She is the communications director for America First PAC. You can go to the website for that, or you can probably just Google America First PAC. But a more upbeat, optimistic chat. I know we get our reality check from Rick Manning, and we need that. And Kelly is focused in a little bit of a different angle in terms of the president's reelection and everything that's going on. So it was good to talk to her. I hope you enjoyed that segment of our show tonight. Wow, I wanted to share a little bit with you about, let's see, we have a couple minutes left before we sign off. Don't run away, because as I've said to you before, we here on the Exceptional Conservative Network are building our shows. We have incredible people that are wonderful patriots. And of course, our founder, Ken McClinton, who created the Exceptional Conservative Network, also has his show, the Exceptional Conservative Show. Very consistent there, Ken. And he's got a 2-hour extravaganza every night, and he follows my show, and he's got great guests. So don't miss that, because he'll be and he's funny. He makes me laugh. Oh, I wanted to share one quick thing, because we just talked about it with Kelly. The the Defense Production Act that the president signed in, that's actually got a lot of history to it. Just so that you know, because Dr. Janes DC likes to give you a little bit of, edification on these issues. So the Defense Production Act was actually, it's a U.S. federal law, of course, and it was enacted in 1950. The purpose of it was, in response to some needs that came out of at the beginning of the Korean War, right? So it was a part of a broad Civil Defense and War Mobilization Act. Now, there are 3 parts to it that I wanted to share with you before we sign off. The Act contains 3 major sections. The first authorizes the president to require businesses to sign contracts or fulfill orders that, in a priority fashion, that are going to be needed. So this will help in the China virus catastrophe. The second part of the Act authorizes President Trump to establish mechanisms through regulations, maybe using some of his agencies in certain ways to allocate or harvest and collate materials and services to really protect the national defense. And then the third part is that it authorizes him to control the civilian economy. I'm not quite sure what that part means yet, so that scarce or critical materials necessary to national defense are available. So I don't know. I don't know if that means, like, is that what Amazon's talking about when they say they'll only be shipping out in a few days? They're going to start only shipping out materials or items that are of particular need to keep people healthy. I guess that makes sense. In any case, whatever that is, it is. But it also, I guess it also allows him, I'm reading here, to use, if he needs to, property or force industries to expand production, and maybe impose wage and price controls. Look, what we were talking about with Kelly in terms of, are you willing to spend an extra couple of dollars to get something that's made in America, that you're supporting American jobs? And if we have a crisis in this country that your children and grandchildren may have to deal with, that the remediation and the support will come from your own country, rather than to be on our, we're not on our knees, but rather than to be at the beck and call of some, brutal dictatorship, communist, the worst of all communist countries, China. I mean, wasn't a moment too soon. And maybe the good thing that'll come out of this whole terrible experience is that we learn that we need to rely on ourselves. That's what America was founded on. That's what we're about. I want to say good night. Have a great evening. Stay safe. Let's get past this. Stay positive. And stay tuned for the Exceptional Conservative Show. Take care, everybody. Dr. Janes, DC. See you next time.